Hello, everyone. Quite a few participants are still coming in, but I'll just say a few technical announcements while we're waiting. We'll have a simultaneous live translation into Spanish, and this Zoom meeting will offer translatable captions into a number of languages. So although these translatable captions are computer generated and not always accurate, they do seem to be improving all the time. And they're certainly better than nothing for certain people. So welcome to the New York World Goodwill online seminar. World Goodwill is, well, just what it says, World Goodwill. But these familiar words highlight two significant ideas in human evolution, good and will. The progression of good describes our purpose on this planet, with the will being the driving force which ensures its eventual appearance. I can do no better than follow the description of goodwill on our website as an energy which has the potential to be a powerful force for social change. Will Goodwill was set up to develop an understanding of this energy and the role it is playing in the creation of a new humanity. So it enables right relationships, and when active, will lead to a world of inclusiveness, justice, and peace. So today we're working with a very topical and challenging theme, human responsibility in an age of transformation, forging a moral direction in science and technology. Today started with two inspiring World Goodwill meetings in Geneva and then in London. Their reflections have surely helped to seed the mental atmosphere on this vast but vital topic. We have three guest speakers to help us. Lisa Shirk, Professor of the Practice of Peace Building and Technology at the University of Notre Dame's Keough School of Global Affairs. Lisa is also Senior Research Fellow at Toda Peace Institute and is working on the positive use of technology in peace tech and digital peace building. And then we'll hear from Andrew Binstock, a longtime co-worker who's spent his life in technology. And after each presentation, and he is currently working on open source software. And Andrew will be talking about individual responsibility in terms of AI. And after the break, we'll hear from Sidarius Perrotta, and he is a software entrepreneur and CEO of Shelf. As a recognized expert in AI and knowledge management, his expertise in these areas has helped organizations like the World Bank, Harvard, and MIT. So he's well qualified to help us understand responsibility in this field. So there'll be time for discussion after each presentation and again during the panel with all three speakers. So we have a wonderful program ahead of us, and we'll close with the Goodwill meditation. In order to place science and technology in their rightful place, I'd like to offer a few thoughts on the need for human consciousness to shift its perspective. To begin with, I'll draw on a spiritual text from Alice Bailey's writings, which provides a glimpse into those whose minds are particularly influenced by the quality of knowledge and science. At a time when applied science is having far-reaching effects, the story it tells is relevant for all humanity. Deep in a pyramid, on all sides, built around by stone, in the deep dark of that stupendous place, a mind and brain, embodied in a man, were working. Outside the pyramid, the world of God established itself. The sky was blue, the winds blew free, the trees and flowers opened themselves unto the sun. But in the pyramid, down in its dim laboratory, a worker stood, toiling at work. His test tubes and his frail appliances he used with skill. In rows and rows, the retorts for fusing and for blending, for crystallizing, and for that which sought division, stood with their flaming fires. The heat was great, the toil severe. Dim passages, in steady progress, led upward to the summit. There a wide window stood, open unto the blue of heaven, and carrying one clear ray down to the worker in the depths. He worked and toiled. He struggled onwards towards his dream, the vision of an ultimate discovery. He sometimes found the thing he sought, and sometimes failed, but never found that which could give him the key to all the rest. In deep despair, he cried aloud unto the God he had forgot, "Give me the key. I alone can do no more good. Give me the key." Then silence reigned. Through the opening on the summit of the pyramid, dropped from the blue of heaven, a key came down. It landed at the feet of the discouraged worker. The key was of pure gold. Upon the key a label, and written blue these words: "Destroy that which thou hast built, and build anew. But only build when thou hast climbed the upward way, traversed the gallery of tribulation, and entered into light within the chamber of the King. Build from the heights, and thus show forth the value of the depths." The worker then destroyed the objects of his previous toil, sparing 3 treasures which he knew were good, and upon which the light could shine. He struggled towards the chamber of the King, and still he struggles. So these 3 treasures referred to are likely to be related to the redeemed forces of the mind, the emotions, and the physical body, and aspects of the personality. And the struggle on this path of redemption that leads to the summit of the pyramid and the chamber of the King, the soul, is involving ever-growing numbers. As we move towards this age of transformation, lessons are coming thick and fast as to the right and wrong direction of mental energy, especially when it comes to applied science, which can fill our minds with knowledge, but not with wisdom. The blue of the sky referred to is full of symbolism of a mind that is filled with spirit, suffused with invisible riches, where ideas and revelations may appear within its limitless expanse. They come as bolts from out of the blue. But of course, we need to look up if we are to appreciate what it has to say. And in this digital era, it's all too easy for our eyes to be drawn down and locked in a state of fascination with the products of technology. Whether it's the virtual world of smartphones, electronic messaging, social media, a balance needs to be restored. For technology provides wonderful tools that can enhance human interaction and the trend towards unity, but it can also lure us deeper into matter and division. Virtual reality aptly describes the deception and the illusion that can lie along this path. That all things start in the realm of consciousness before they manifest outwardly. So the role of education is paramount in creating a safe and ethical space in a world which is so rapidly becoming a digital community. There are the intractable problems of misinformation, disinformation, the unregulated use of the internet, as well as the use of algorithms with conscious or unconscious bias, and the effect of AI on the creative industries. Regulation isn't easy, although a start has been made in earnest. But perhaps the best solution is to recognize the vital need for tackling these issues early on in schools as well as in higher learning institutions. Future generations need to be enabled to go into this digital world clear-eyed to make informed decisions. For education is about increasing light and understanding of who we essentially are as human beings. If we live in a filter bubble or echo chamber, which only allows us access to the thoughts of others similar to us, we are deprived of life-affirming challenges. And by encouraging open discussion around complex issues, we can become better informed and more inclusive. For when goodwill is present, we learn to negotiate conflict and strive to create the best possible outcomes, responsible for our choices and actions, considering the effects on others and the natural world. This, in a telepathic and interconnected world, where we become involved in the environment we are all helping to shape. Some of you will be familiar with the philosopher Rudolf Steiner's work and know of the schools worldwide set up to give young people the freedom to use their imaginations, encourage creativity, rather than placing undue emphasis on knowledge prematurely. And such freedom will be increasingly important in navigating future online challenges. Early last century, Steiner predicted this move to a machine-based world. And he noted, in facing the future, the need to eradicate from the soul all fear and terror of what comes towards mankind out of the future. It is part of what we must learn during this age, he said, namely to act out of pure trust in the ever-present help of the spiritual world. Therefore, let us discipline our will and let us seek the awakening from within ourselves every morning and every evening. And the spiritual world is one in which humanity's role will nurture the lower kingdoms, recognizing all matter as being alive and evidencing the densest aspect of spirit. So, fortified with knowledge and goodwill, we can face all that comes towards us out of the future to create a new and safer world for all. And so we look forward to hearing from our three speakers now. Before this, I'll hand you over to Michael Galloway, and Mike will be saying a few words about World Goodwill before chairing the sessions with the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Really great to have that really clear moral direction and spiritual connection right at the beginning of the seminar. So thank you for that really great intro. Listening to your words, Chris, it reminds me of one of the sort of fundamental purposes of World Goodwill, which is not just to sort of forge this vision or to build this vision of the future, this positive vision of the future, but really also to build it in light of the fact of divinity, which is transcendent in nature and also immanent in every human being. And I think that lovely Rudolf Steiner quote you shared, it was something to act out of pure trust in the ever-present help of the spiritual world. Well, I think that ever-present help is as much transcendent as it is hidden or perhaps awakening within each of us. But regardless of the specifics of one's, religious or spiritual convictions, I think we can all agree that there is an innate moral force in every human being, regardless of whether you call it spiritual or not, and likewise in humanity as a whole. And the question before us today at this seminar is how this innate moral force can be awakened and directed in fulfillment of humanity's highest potential. So today, as we know, humanity is facing a number of moral crises across a variety of sectors, and this is evoking a response from a growing number of men and women in every country who are dedicating their lives to leading humanity into a world which is based on sounder values. This group sees the present as it is, the future as it can be, and they're committed to working out creatively the path to get us there. In the Alice Bailey writings, this group is referred to as the New Group of World Servers. It is a worldwide group, and it spans the full diversity of the human race. It has no outer organization whatsoever, and its members are united only by certain universal principles, universal moral principles that they all hold. They do not all think the same, nor do they all hold the same opinions, but all are committed to goodwill, to international unity, and to right human and planetary relationship as best as they can understand them. The apparent proliferation of division in our world today highlights the real need for those who can rise above these divisions, who possess not only a keen intellect, but also discernment, unbiased compassion, and the will and the desire to do good no matter the cost. And so before I introduce our first speaker today, I'd like to just invite all of you to join me in the sounding of a mantram. Really, it's also you could say it's a dedication in support of this worldwide group. The mantram of the New Group of World Servers. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May I fulfill my part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Thank you. So I have the honor now of introducing our first speaker, Lisa Shirk. Lisa is a political scientist by training. She is professor of the practice of peace building and technology at the University of Notre Dame's Koff School of Global Affairs. Shirk has 30 years of experience in peacebuilding research, policy advocacy, practice, and teaching. Her current research focuses on the positive roles of technology in peace tech and digital peacebuilding. She also holds the title of Senior Research Fellow with the Toda Peace Institute, where she coordinates with civil society and technology companies to experiment and innovate new technologies that can scale social cohesion. She has experience in peace process design, mediation, and facilitation in over 20 countries, and built the first peacebuilding policy initiative in Washington, D.C., as the founding director of the Alliance for Peacebuilding's policy program. Lisa, we're so great to have you here today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. This is my first time with your community, so it's nice to hear more about your values and where you're coming from. So I'll be talking today about the role of technology in social cohesion. So I'm going to start to share my screen where you can see some of the thinking. Can someone let me know, are you seeing my screen okay?
Yes, we can see it, but it's not full screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you so much. All right, so my work at the University of Notre Dame focuses on the role of technology and social cohesion, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. I just want to sort of give us a broad historical approach to why technology has become so critical in helping humanity, but also in undermining our ability to work together. And that's when I say social cohesion, it's really about the glue that holds everyone together. The United Nations defines it as, the ability of states, governments, and societies to work together across divides, and for each individual in that matrix of society to feel like they have agency to impact the world around them. So if we think back on the last 20 years, particularly of technology, there's been a variety of different narratives, really starting with optimism and innocence in around 2000, where we thought, technology would really help people be more productive. And, social media started with the explicit idea of connecting people. Around 2007, the first social media and search engines started becoming monetized, meaning they started using advertising to generate profit for these platforms. And as we look back, that was a really critical moment because it ended up amplifying and generating some dynamics that have been very harmful for society. But even in 2008 to 2010, we still were hearing mostly that technology was going to have a positive impact on peace and democracy. There was a few Stanford University professors who thought that Facebook was going to create world peace in 30 years just by bringing the world together. It seems strange to read those words now, but when we saw the Arab Spring in 2010, 2011, we did kind of have the sense that maybe people would start fighting on social media and they wouldn't need to fight in the streets anymore, that they would be pursuing their interests, their human rights through social media rather than on battlefields or in the streets. But that's, of course, not what has happened either. It was really in 2013 that we started getting the red flags or the awareness that social media was causing harm. And the alarm bell really was sent from Myanmar, from the civil society peace-building groups in Myanmar who informed the world first in 2013 that the government was using social media, Facebook in particular, to organize a genocide against the Muslim Rohingya population. And it was really in response to some of these early harms and alarms that the tech companies built what they call the trust and safety elements of their work. So now there are whole trust and safety teams at Facebook They started around 2017, 2018. Governments tried to catch up with this idea of, oh, we have to somehow build some guardrails to social media with regulation. Civil society was doing advocacy. But by 2020, we were starting to see that what we call industrial scale digital harms. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But basically, this is a timeline of we're not really certain what comes here in the future, but because there's been a lot of change over the last 20 years. In terms of like what harmful content has been happening online, there in the 1990s, people were worried just about spam, some nudity, harassment, and child exploitation online. In the 2000s, it became like the early 2000s, it was hate speech again and terror recruitment. So ISIS started recruiting on Facebook, and people were promoting material that was about self-harm, which was, of course, harmful to humanity. But it was 2010s when we started seeing the escalation of this with polarizing political speech by mainstream political candidates who were using Facebook to spread information that was concerning about other groups of people, sort of targeting them. There were disinformation campaigns from other countries that were targeting, especially in the US, but also in France and other countries. And really, there was the development of foreign information operations where, countries were trying to divide populations. So instead of social cohesion, we saw incredible polarization. I'm going to say more about this next era now in this slide, because what we see now is this sort of tidal wave of false and hateful information online. Some people call it the collapse of truth, because there are so many rumors and blogs, accusations, different sources of information saying completely different things that many in the public just don't know how to make sense of this. And so there's this sort of collapse of our grounding of how do we get information. And this is in part because many nations, like over 50 countries now, have cyber armies. So these are armies, military personnel in warehouses, sitting by computers, basically fighting an online war of propaganda. And the goal of that is very confusing. It's not just like to attack one thing. It's really, they're often supporting both sides and generating hateful content coming from two sides of a argument. So the point is not to have people join one side or the other. The point is polarization. And so these cyber armies are making it difficult for us all to feel like we are one people living on planet Earth. And what we've seen increasingly is all that digital hate and disinformation online is spilling over into real world violence. So in tech companies, they created community guidelines, they created trust and safety teams in the 2010s. Now governments are starting to get involved. But really the future of our information environment, our information ecosystem, is in the balance in terms of how are we going to handle this tidal wave, this tsunami of harmful content, aiming at dividing societies. The people at tech companies who monitor this hate speech and this disinformation, they're called content moderators. Content moderation, what they do, pulling off harmful false information online, is highly contested, and that in and of itself is polarizing. In many countries, there's hardly any content moderation because companies don't have staff that speak local languages. As I just said, there's sort of like a real divide in terms of what is disinformation, because we don't agree anymore on basic facts or basic sources of information. When tech companies take down content, it sometimes feels like a violation of free speech. And what is another factor in all this is that last year, the tech sector laid off 100,000 tech workers, and most of those were content moderators. So a few years ago, there was more content moderation online than there is today. So the trafficking in false, hateful, deceptive information online is growing every year, and there's very little that is stopping it. There's mostly just fuel to that fire. Now, people often say, well, it's not technology to blame for polarization. And in part, they're right, because polarization is natural in societies. It happened long before technology began. The point of technology, what isn't actually often the start of polarizing conversations or divisions in society, but what it does is in the profit models incentivize and amplify distrust and hate for other people. And that's because the loudest voices on social media keep people there the longest. And tech companies make more money, they show more advertising, the longer any of us stays online. So their goal is just to show the most distressing or polarizing content, often because it keeps people on the platforms longer, and it's related to their profit model. And this is where my presentation kind of takes a turn in the road, because up to this point, I'm kind of laying out the problem. A lot of people would say we just need more tech regulation by governments, or we need tech companies to hire back more content moderators. But my research shows something different, and that is that the very code of these digital platforms lays the groundwork of whether that platform will contribute to social cohesion or whether it will fuel toxic polarization. And so in a recent article I wrote, I say the road to hell is not paved in gold. The road to hell is paved with code. And this is meaning that technology code, the design of the platforms, determines its impact on society. So code is not neutral. It is shaping our human behavior, and it is showing us some content and not other content, and making decisions that actually are steering humanity in one direction or the other. There's sort of, in my research, there were three narratives of, sort of what do we do about all of this harmful content online. The first I call the user-centered narrative, and tech platforms voice this view. They say that their platforms, in their view, are neutral mirrors, simply reflecting user-generated content. So algorithms can demote. So algorithms is the math that determines what we see or don't see online, because we can't all see everything. So what each of these tech platforms does is decide on a personal basis, based on your search history, what you've liked or disliked, and who you are, all the factors of your identity. It determines what content you will see. And while tech companies control that algorithm, they're saying tech companies can't generate pro-social content, good content between people. But the second view, the second narrative, comes actually from former tech workers, people who used to be inside Meta, Facebook, Google. And they say it's actually the design of these platforms that is causing so much problem. And they use the analogy that digital platforms, technology is like a coliseum. So like digital spaces are like gladiator arenas where there's a few people fighting online and everyone else is just basically watching, spellbound at this fight. And building a platform that amplifies the most divisive voices is not good for our human society and our ability to solve problems together. Because if we can't talk to each other, if we're hating each other, and if we don't have accurate information, we can't solve global challenges and problems that we have. And this is where sort of I'm saying we need a new generation of people who are focused on regulating technology designs. And this is where we're focusing now on identifying what makes a technology platform really serve humanity, or be pro-social, we say, pro-humanity. And there are already pro-social tech platforms that I'll go over here in just a minute. And I'm thinking that we can learn from them, and we can hopefully amplify and increase the public support for using these other platforms. In the service of this goal, I have helped to set up the Council on Technology and Social Cohesion. So this is a place, a series of workshops, conferences, events, and publications where we're bringing together people from the technology companies, peace building professionals, conflict resolution mediators, as well as government and business leaders, to come together and try to find out how we can incentivize the support for pro-social technology. Let me go to this next diagram here. So I would say there's sort of, in my conflict resolution work, and I've worked in Iraq, Afghanistan, many countries around the world on peace processes. And there are sort of a series of steps or stages in terms of that peace process. There's setting norms, building relationships, gathering information about what the conflict is about, deliberating on possible solutions to the conflict, and then, you know, sort of generating a final solution that works for the most people, or addresses the needs and interests of most people. So what I've mapped onto this sort of conflict resolution process are how technology platforms can contribute at each of those different levels. So this is like the digital anatomy, the anatomy of digital platforms, to bridge divides, to build social cohesion between people. So I'm going to just quickly go through some of these examples, what we could have on Facebook and Twitter and other platforms on setting norms, and then I'll go through some of the other solutions. But tags, buttons, nudges, and public service announcements was where I want to start. So we call these humanizing affordances. Let me start actually with identity and intention tags. This is the idea that actually eBay has already started using a long time ago, and that's because they hired a conflict resolution expert to help them think about resolving conflicts between buyers and sellers on eBay. So this little example, this little image at the bottom of the screen there on seller information, it shows that, you know, sort of the social confidence that this person has had good interactions with other people. It's also a verification tag. This is somebody who's registered. So it's not an anonymous person selling something to you on eBay. It's a registered, verified person. There's a reputation accrual. So this 99.8% positive feedback is a sort of reputation that a seller gathers over time with what their identity is on this platform. What we can learn from eBay is that other platforms could be doing this too. We could be using intention tags. I intend to listen and learn from others. Sometimes what's happening on social media is that you can't read the context here, and you're just feeling like the person might be angry with you when actually they're trying to understand. And so what an intention tag would do is allow you to say what your purpose is in engaging in this conversation. Another way of taking the polarization down a bit is to have identity tags. I could say I'm a mother, biker, gardener, artist, and other people might see me not just as somebody commenting online, but more as a full human being with a lot of richness. We could also have reaction buttons instead of just the like button or the angry button, which is particularly harmful. we could have a common ground button when we feel agreement, or we can appreciate that we might not agree on everything, but we have some common ground with something somebody has said. We could appreciate other people's views and just, say, I don't agree with you, but I appreciate your experiences that have led you to those beliefs. We could have a reaction button that is just a pair of glasses saying, oh, now I understand your point of view better. We could be able to show solidarity with others. We could give thanks to others. So those are just a few of the kinds of reaction buttons. There's a variety of other things that Meta and Twitter and other platforms could do. They could have pop-ups, what we call public service announcements, basically encouraging people to listen to each other, not just to shout at each other. So kind of taking the goal of the platform, not just to be the loudest voice or the most polarizing voice, but being able to reward people who are listening well and paraphrasing other people well. On Twitter, there was actually an experiment kind of coaching people with a public service announcement that would pop up. If somebody started typing something that was kind of hateful or maybe not all the way true, there was a meanness warning that would just say most users don't do this. And Twitter found that this really impacted people's behavior. Also, what eBay found is that they coach people on their tone in responding to people. They said your comment is unlikely to be effective based on its tone. And to achieve your goals, try expressing yourself like this. And then they would give some draft language. At Notre Dame, my students and I are using AI to generate sample languages for responses to disinformation or hate speech. And so we're hoping this can be sort of like a coach. If somebody sees hate speech, they can call up our little chat bot that will just offer and generate for them some ideas about how they might respond to sort of protect the humanity of the person who's being targeted, but also to call out the humanity of the person who's saying it. So that's sort of the first step that I wanted to talk to you about, of sort of this stair step of conflict resolution and social cohesion building. There are a variety of platforms that have been built specifically for dialogue. So Leah does dialogue between high school and college students around the world who come from different backgrounds. Right now, with the war in Israel and Gaza, there is an emphasis on pairing up people from the region to be able to talk with each other online with a facilitator there helping them to do that. Gather Round is another platform. And really, there's a variety of different platforms out there that have been designed specifically to help people across cultural divides to understand each other. A variety of different initiatives, this one in Bangladesh by the UN Development Program, are using technology to also do these peace talk cafes to promote the values of peaceful and inclusive societies on social media. So it's actually really beautiful when you start learning about all the people using technology to try to build social cohesion online. In Chicago, which is close to me here at the University of Notre Dame, social workers are using Facebook to reach out to gang members and to try to befriend them and figure out if there's a way of being supportive in really the de-escalation or demobilization, like sort of leaving gangs and reintegrating back into civilian society. So I've gone through setting norms, building relationships. I'd like to move on to gathering information and just quickly show you this slide from Syria. The Carter Center, which is a major conflict resolution think tank and tank. It does a lot of good peace building work in the world. They measure online data to visualize the shifting movements of armed troops and to help bring together parties with information about what is actually happening. I'm going to jump up to the next stair step for the sake of time here and talk about the use of technology for deliberation. There's a platform called Remesh that is used actually by the business community to build internal solutions within different companies. But Remesh has also been used by the United Nations to help publics in Yemen, Tunisia, Libya talk with each other about and really deliberate about what are the policy options in their country, what is possible, how might they move into the future, and what might a peace process or a peace agreement look like that might bring sustainable peace to that country. So Remesh uses artificial intelligence. So it often, like a lot of people online, can put in their qualitative ideas. So they're typing in their ideas. That's a qualitative input. And then they can vote basically up or down. So they agree or disagree with other people's contributions. So there's a qualitative and a quantitative input here. And what artificial intelligence does, as you see in this automated analysis, is it makes it sort of digestible what thousands of people are saying. So you can listen at scale to people. So this is what humanity has really needed, is an ability to listen to thousands of people on what people actually are really caring about. And this is important not only because it gives individuals a sense of agency, that they can participate in the decisions that affect their lives, but it really helps policymakers decide, what policies might be sustainable and have public support. So Remesh is one platform that does that. The other one is called Polis. And Polis is part of the Computational Democracy Project. You can read more about Polis online. I didn't highlight the name here, but it's in this blue square. You can see POLIS. Polis is another platform also built to help people listen to each other at scale, and really to solve problems at scale. Many countries now are using Polis to enable the public to have input onto different policy discussions. In Taiwan, the digital ministry in Taiwan used Polis dozens of times. It's helped them solve more than 30 policy dilemmas and reach policy consensus and actually pass legislation. So the idea is that governments would use Polis to bring together a polarized group of people, or to find out where is their polarization, where is their disagreement. And the platform is unique. Well, it's similar to Remesh, but it's what makes the two platforms unique is that the algorithms, the AI, finds the common ground between people. So it helps people see not only what everybody is saying, but where everybody agrees. And really, that is like the key to peace building and successful peace processes, is you have to be able to find where there is agreement online. So in closing, I've just kind of gone over some of the digital technology design affordances. So by design affordances, like how you design them with certain buttons and tags and nudges and features and algorithms, and how we use AI to really find the common ground between people. So with that, I will stop and open it up for any questions.
Thanks so much, Lisa. That was absolutely marvelous. I'm looking forward to rewatching it actually after the seminar, because there was so much information in there and it was just so rich. I especially like this idea, which it sort of seems very obvious, but having different types of reaction buttons to actually promote a different type of relationship across users, and the idea that they could get like sort of warnings if what they're about to post is inappropriate. I think so often people act impulsively. Most people I don't think are intentional. It's sort of, I walk through the streets of New York City and I see people road rage like all the time. I'm sure all those people are very nice people, but they've just gotten into a state of polarization, basically, and then they've acted without thinking. But I wanted to pose a few questions if that's all right, and if anybody else in the audience has, a question, if we have time, we can get to you all as well. So if you want to, excuse me, to raise your hand, please feel free to do so, and we'll try to get to you in just a moment. But Lisa, I wanted to ask you, are there um are there any could you speak to a bit some more about some sort of some specific ways that technology is having a direct effect on our political systems? Like I know they probably have, I can imagine like a sort of secondary effect, like they affect society and then that in turn affects politics. But is there any way that you see these things having like a more direct effect on democracies or even on more like authoritarian governments, say like in China or something like that?
That's a very good question. I think it's still too new. Honestly, both Remesh and Polis are just gaining public awareness now. They've both been around for 5 to 10 years, but particularly because artificial intelligence has increased so rapidly, just literally in the last year, the potential for these to be used at the scale that they're being used at now in a few countries, yes, there's incredible potential to take this wider and for example, right now I'm planning a project with Afghanistan. So the Taliban is not allowing democratic inputs, but the rest of the world should be able to listen to Afghans and to hear their policy priorities, and these platforms should help serve them to find a way forward. And so we're trying to figure out a way of doing that in the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think they could be used more widely, and partly that's why I come to speak at events like this, because we're trying to raise awareness that this is an amazing revelation in humanity about how technology can help bring us together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this isn't really my specific field of expertise for sure, technology, but I've done quite a bit of research, in preparation for this seminar, but I actually hadn't heard of Remesh or of Polis. And it was really what you shared about them. I mean, it's absolutely very, very profound, actually, what they're doing. It's incredibly profound. And I can imagine if, governments start adopting some of these technologies rather than, for disinformation campaigns, using AI for that or for more advanced weapons, for instance, they could actually, I mean, even domestically, there's a lot of problems to solve as well as internationally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's another application that I'm working with the companies on right now, Polis, to discuss, can we use these with school boards in the United States? Because there's so much political polarization and schools are so divided, parents are so divided. And even at this small level, these platforms could do a lot to help people understand each other and listen to each other.
Mm-hmm. I have a question here from John Horan. Oh, I just lowered his hand instead of unmuting. I'm so sorry. Let me see here. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Michael. I just wanted to hear your thoughts, Lisa, on, as they say in the Valley, that tech is agnostic. By that, it's generally interpreted as meaning neither good nor evil, but simply a tool. And I thought I'd ask for your thoughts on that.
I think that's right. It is a tool, and it can be used for great harm or great good. But the design of my key point is the design of the tool makes all the difference. And really, it's the profit model that often makes all the difference too. So when governments support the design of platforms like Polis and Remesh, you end up with a tool that serves humanity and brings us together and shows us where our common ground is. When you have designed a tool to make profit by advertising that requires polarizing content to keep people angry and engaged online, like a Colosseum gladiator arena, you're going to get a very different impact on humanity. And so, the computer engineers building these platforms are holding the rest of us in our hands. They're developing the laws, the codes that guide how we're going to be together. And it was Harvard professor Lawrence Lessig who wrote the book on code as law. So a law professor is basically saying it's now code, computer code, that is shaping how human beings are relating to each other. So we really have to be very careful about the power that computers and technology has.
And I can't agree more or thank you enough, because I think you are precise and very articulate about this, Lisa. In the world of tech, they would say it's we can fix this on the front end and not the back end. And just as Lisa was saying, by the design of the algorithms, the software itself, rather than trying to build on a regulatory government generated mechanism to regulate, what comes out. And Lisa, I was so thrilled by the way that you brought up the early studies from Stanford that said Facebook is going to bring the world together and end war. If for those of us who've been watching the internet since the middle 90s, this originally was sold to us all as the world's great library. You can find anything. It only became an engine of commerce in the latter part of the 90s, which is, as many things in our society, influences trajectory. And like Michael, I agree. I can't wait to rewatch this and take some notes. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Lisa, sort of spinning off of what John said, there's another question I have for you. It's sort of a $1 million, one of the $1 million questions here at play. And that's this idea of how do we assess whether a framework is really conforming to a standard of right behavior? So it's sort of there's all this, I think a lot of people agree there's polarization in the world, but there's a lot of disagreement about how to handle that polarization. And there's almost, you could say, polarization about how to handle polarization. And it seems almost like a lot of these techniques, peacekeeping techniques that are sort of being devoted to the idea of polarization almost needs to be, it's almost like a whole nother field of dealing with the polarization around polarization, if that makes any sense. So some people, they'll say, okay, well, we should do more regulation and censorship. And as other people say, oh, well, that's a limitation of free speech. And that's not the right way to do it. And then those are actually two almost irreconcilable sometimes. There almost isn't middle ground.
Right. I mean, my position on this is that everyone actually, so people often ask me, why isn't there just total free speech? And as soon as I say, because if there was, online would be nothing but child pornography, or it would be on all of our feeds. And almost everybody, regardless of your political background, can say, we do not want that. And that was really the first thing that the tech companies started working together on, is content moderation, to make sure that there's no child pornography online. There's trying to take as much of it down and building an entire system to pull it off. So most of humanity can agree that we do not want children exploited this way. Most of humanity can also agree we don't want to see beheadings and violence towards civilians online. Right now, my feed is pretty full of that from the war, and I don't think it's good for us to see it. I know that the tech companies are torn between censorship and free speech and trauma. Literally, there is a lot of terrible things happening in the world, and our brains are greatly affected by images and videos. And it's not that we don't want to know the truth. We do need to know what is happening, but it's actually easier for us to be able to stay engaged and politically active and care about issues when we are not literally psychologically wounded from seeing things that are so horrific that they scar us and they immobilize us. So those are two examples of where I think there is actually, when ISIS started posting videos of beheadings, almost everybody in the US agreed, we don't want this on Facebook. Mm-hmm. So there's wider agreement than actually than often is portrayed. For the rest of it, in terms of just, how people behave and the more low scale content online that's harmful, that has to do with design, I think. So there's kind of different factors here. There's really bad actors who are putting things up that we need to pull down. I would say also from foreign governments, I think as part of our information integrity, we need to know if another country is planting Facebook posts trying to divide us. We need to know that, and that there should at least be a flag on it that this is coming, this is originated in this country or that country, so we would know. But I think, a lot of the content moderation leaves people feeling censored. And so we need to find tech designs that help people be kinder to each other and to listen more to each other. And that would then lead to less censorship, less content moderation if the design of these platforms helped us be our better selves.
Thanks, Lisa. Very, very good answer. Thank you. Curtis, we're sort of running, I'd love to hear your question, Curtis, and I'm sure Lisa would as well. We're sort of running short on time. We're already a bit over. So Curtis, if you could, we're going to have a panel at the end, and we'd love for you to ask your question then. And Lisa can answer as well as the other guests. So Lisa, thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the panel later. I'd like to next invite our next speaker to come on, Andrew Binstock, to speak about individual responsibility in the age of AI. Andrew has spent his career in technology. He was formerly the editor-in-chief of Java Magazine, and before that, he was the editor of Dr. Dobbs Journal. Earlier, he headed up technology forecasts at Price Waterhouse. He lives in Northern California with his wife, and when he's not developing open source software, he studies piano. Andrew, you've been a longtime coworker, and we're really grateful to have you here on the seminar today. So if you could go ahead and turn your video on.
Hello there.
Hi there, Andrew. Yeah.
Can you hear? Great.
Go ahead.
Would you mind putting up the first slide of my deck? Give me just a moment. Apologize. So, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here discussing what the future holds. I have to say that I'm still processing some of the amazing information that Lisa shared, and it made me very hopeful that there are groups that are moving things forward. Years ago, I was in charge of technology forecasts at what was then Price Waterhouse. Forecasting the future for clients who depend on you is a tricky business because despite your best efforts, you're going to be wrong a lot of the time. One way we chose to address that uncertainty was to provide forecasts at 3 different levels: projections that we were pretty sure of, those that were likely to arise from the previous projections, and those that were much farther out. In 1999, when the internet was becoming popular, but the web was still very immature, we were getting a lot of pressure from clients to forecast what effect the internet and the web would have. Our reply, which I think has been validated, is that the internet would make you more of who you are. That is, if you're a hard worker, it will allow you to do more work. If you're lazy, it will help you find ways to be even lazier. And if you love to cook, you'll be able to cook in ways you never thought of, and so on. Today, we're in the same place in relationship to AI that we were in 1999 with the internet. We're on the threshold of enormous changes and upheaval. And as with the internet, those changes will reach every corner of our lives and businesses, and they will impose responsibilities on us. Could I have the next slide? If I were pressed to make one of those safe assumptions about the effects of AI, I'd say this: it will make you even more of who you are, but it will require more from you than the internet required. This is what I mean by responsibilities. Chief among those requirements will be new responsibilities. In this presentation, I'd like to talk about responsibilities in the workplace and in the larger consumption of information in daily life. I'll finish up with some tools to help work out these responsibilities. Those resources are shown in this slide deck, which World Goodwill will make available later on. Could I have the next slide, please? I've put a little more text in these slides than I'm accustomed to doing, precisely so that they can be used as a bit of a handbook later on. So let's start by talking about the effect of AI in the workplace. In previous generations, the primary effect of change in the workplace was the replacement of physical labor by machines. In doing so, machines displaced many jobs and eliminated entire professions, almost all of which were blue-collar work, that is, manual labor in its many forms. AI, however, is a knowledge-based phenomenon, and as a result, it will not only affect blue-collar jobs, but it will also make significant incursions into white-collar jobs, not just management roles, but also the professions. Low-skill office jobs will feel the first effects. Activities such as filing, summarizing reports, bookkeeping, claims processing, the initial level of customer service, and so on will be affected. Later on, higher skill jobs will give way to AI in probably a two-step process. Initially, AI will handle simple profession-specific tasks, and as AI capabilities grow, it will handle more complicated cases that presently require human judgment. We see this already happening in the health industries. AI is analyzing X-rays and medical tests and providing feedback in routine cases. These analyses will surely expand to more cases, such that radiologists will be needed only for difficult or exceptional X-rays. That is, far fewer radiologists will be needed. So while AI will indeed threaten many white-collar jobs, if you have such a job, you owe it to yourself to recognize the threat and to adapt accordingly. Specifically, how? For most employees, the movement of AI up the value chain will require that they continue to acquire new skills and move up the value chain in parallel. The present white-collar mindset in which employees attend to their skills only a few hours a year in the form of, quotes, continuing education, will need to change. And employees who want to remain employed will have to push themselves into progressively more advanced skill sets. Standing pat will no longer work. I wish to point out that this kind of professional self-development has always been a recommended practice. Now, however, it will become mandatory. This topic of known best practices now becoming essential is a theme I will touch on later on. A second important responsibility is to keep up to date on what is happening in your industry, particularly as regards the use of AI. You want to make sure you're not falling behind. One of the best ways to do this is to embrace AI in your workplace. Become a leader in learning how to use it. Learn and then teach others. You want to be the radiologist who is making the hospital more responsive to patients by using AI. That person will have a job. Encourage colleagues to do the same. If you're a manager, then encourage self-development by making it easier for your employees to invest in themselves. This responsibility will become an important part of your job if you want to retain employees and have them contribute intelligently to your work. Allow me a side note here. It's tempting to think that employees whose jobs are dislocated can fall back on retraining. However, retraining has a very mixed record. Low-skilled employees, especially older ones, frequently don't have the capacity to learn new and different skills, even if they can afford the cost in terms of time and money. As detailed in the book Janesville, which analyzed what happened in Janesville, Wisconsin, when the town's largest employer closed. Employees who retrained fared the worst of all the groups, worse than, for instance, those who went on unemployment for several years waiting for the plant to reopen. Employees who successfully completed retraining, which were only a very small fraction of those who set out to retrain, found themselves to be too old to get entry-level jobs in their new professions, and those that could get those jobs found great difficulty making ends meet on entry-level salaries. So when encouraging colleagues or employees to build their skills, discourage the thinking that they can just get another job. For most of them, that's likely to be far more difficult than they expect, and in many cases, impossible. Could I have the next slide, please? The second area of responsibility comes from the consumption of, in the consumption of information. And the problem is the ability of AI to create illusion, to make the untrue seem true. I'll be focusing on this issue in its various forms for the rest of this talk. Because AI works not with mechanical forces, but words, images, videos, and ideas, it can be used in many ways to hide or distort the reality by making one thing to appear another, and so dupe honest people who are not alert to the possible deceptions. This is similar in a certain way to the initial wave of spam, in which many people, unaware that they were being duped in the early days of the internet, responded to spam and lost money, were badly affected. The kind of deception that I'm talking about is already happening in academia in the form of plagiarism. Students turn in well-written essays that were entirely created by AI. If you'd like to see this in action, I suggest going to ChatGPT and type in something like the following: I need 1,500 words on why Louis XVI was guillotined. In less than 20 seconds, you'll have an articulate essay on this topic. To give you an illustration of the high quality of this generated text, here's a paragraph I chose at random from the essay that was produced when I made that exact request. Quote, as the situation deteriorated, the Estates General was convened in 1789 to address the crisis. However, the Third Estate, representing the commoners, broke away from the Estates General and established the National Assembly, signaling the beginning of the revolution. This event, along with the storming of the Bastille on July 4th, 1789, marked a significant shift in power dynamics and set off a chain of events that led to the fall of the monarchy. I think you'd agree that an essay written at this level for a high school student or an underclassman in college would certainly earn high marks and would represent a very tempting option if they're running late on their homework. Teachers then are on the front line of the problem of distinguishing what's real, and they are very much struggling with this problem. While plagiarism might not seem like an important problem outside of academia, the use of falsified images and videos certainly is. Could I have the next slide, please? Images are often falsified. Changing images is a feat that goes back decades. I think at one time or another, we've all seen or read about the images of the Soviet Politburo under Stalin, in which over the years, ministers who had fallen outside of Stalin's favor were removed from the photos. Today, however, pictures are routinely doctored. The low-hanging fruit in changing images is modifying texts on signs, t-shirts, and placards. So if you see a photo that's presented to arouse emotions of outrage, anger, elation, surprise, be suspicious of them, especially when they contain text. Often, however, photos are simply borrowed from one context and claimed to be from a different one. If you go to the fact-checking site, Snopes.com, you will see many examples of war footage that is from one conflict that is being repurposed for another. Sometimes the repurposing is a genuine error, but in such cases, such as in this photo, the person posting it did not do the minimal checking before posting it. Don't be that person. Images in particular are easy to check for authenticity and right attribution. I'll discuss that shortly. Could I have the next slide, please? A much more dangerous problem today is known as deep fakes, in which a video has been transformed so that it appears that something else is actually happened, or the participants are actually different people. To show how subtle this can be, I've lined up a clip of an entertainer who does impersonations in his appearance on TV in the David Letterman show. In the clip, he's impersonating Tom Cruise. I expect not many people were anticipating hearing about Tom Cruise in the World Goodwill seminar, but so it is. Later on, someone took this clip and added a deep fake dimension to it, which you'll see whenever the impersonator, who doesn't look like Tom Cruise at all, briefly becomes Tom Cruise whenever he quotes him. The clip starts as the impersonator is recounting his first meeting with Tom Cruise on a movie set. Could we have the first clip, please?
Can you hear it, Andrew?
I cannot hear it. No.
So he comes over and he sits next to me, and I think he had been briefed on some of the supporting guys, but he was like trying to place me, you know? So he sat down next to me, he's like, I love your work. And I went, oh, thanks, I love your work too, Tom Cruise. Thanks. And I go, yeah, I'm friends with Judd Apatow and Seth Rogen, and they went to your house. He went, yes. They did come to my house. And I said, Seth Rogen was like, it was amazing. He has like a bike track in his backyard. It's phenomenal. And I did a Seth Rogen impression, and it was like I did a magic trick. Tom Cruise was like, yeah. Wow. And he points to me. And he pointed at me and he goes, you do impressions and you're on Saturday Night Live. And I went, hey.
Thank you.
It was like you won a game show.
Did you see how subtle that was? How he just morphed very smoothly. Somebody who doesn't look like Tom Cruise suddenly became Tom Cruise. Now that you know what we're dealing with, let's look at another Tom Cruise clip. I ask you here to see whether you can tell whether it's really Tom Cruise or a deep fake. In this clip, Cruise is discussing the last time he met Mikhail Gorbachev.
Seems to be a problem. Just give me 1 second, Andrew.
Sure. Sorry to put you through that.
I'm sorry, Andrew, is there supposed to be sound? Because I don't have any sound here.
Yeah, it says there's supposed to be sound and there's supposed to be action and so forth. So
Okay.
There we go.
That's why.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's going on here. Let me just try one more time.
That's why.
Oh.
It's it's a little embarrassing, you know. It reminds me, I was once in Russia. I ran into Gorbachev. He said, "You know, Mr. Movie Star, are you nervous?" I said, "No, Mr. Gorbachev, I'm not nervous. I know." He goes, "Well, remember how much a polar bear weighs." I said, "Polar bear?" He said, "Enough to break the ice." It's the last time I've ever seen Macau Gorbachev. Thank you.
What's up, TikTok?
sorry to create those difficulties with the video. Anyway, so there you see an entirely deep fake clip. Tom Cruise had nothing to do with that video. He was never part of it, any scene in a movie that was like that or any of that sort. This was entirely made up in deep fake technology. I want to point out that just like image manipulation, the deep fake video technology is not new. Movie studios have used this for software for years. If you remember the 1994 movie in which Forrest Gump meets President Johnson, you saw a deep fake technology at work. What's different today is that AI technologies have made it very simple for anyone to create the same effects. And of course, many of the first applications of this have been less than honorable, and they signal the kind of trouble we can see in the future. While Tom Cruise may be an entertaining deepfake, a recent video showed President Zelensky of the Ukraine announcing a ceasefire and telling Ukrainian soldiers to lay down their weapons. The problem of the difficulty of distinguishing the real from the unreal has three very serious effects. The first obvious one is that it will become increasingly hard to determine what is true. This will cause great confusion and lead people to take actions that they might not otherwise take. It will overwhelm people to the point, the second effect is that it will overwhelm people to the point that they will stop making the effort to distinguish the true from the untrue and will simply opt to believe what they're told. This dynamic is already very visible with populist politicians who will invent their own facts, knowing that many people won't believe them, but that enough people will simply accept them because they're not sure if they're true and they don't have the resources or the inclination to find out. And finally, the third effect is that it will enable culpable people to evade responsibility by asserting that the evidence against them has been made up or created by others. All three repercussions are pretty serious issues. Well, this talk has gotten pretty dark. I must say, I suggest we look at a Marx Brothers clip, which encapsulates the entire problem in a way that only Groucho Marx can do. This scene is from the 1934 movie Duck Soup.
Your Excellency, here's your water. What in the world's the matter? Your Excellency, I thought you left.
Oh, no, I don't leave.
But I saw you with my own eyes.
Well, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?
I expect that the question, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes, will no longer be funny in a few years, and in fact will become the crucial question to address. So what are the responsibilities of the individual? First and foremost is to recognize what is true. The second major responsibility is to avoid spreading that which is untrue. Let's start with the first task, getting the true information. Here's a toolkit of current best practices. Let's start with news. Get your news from sites that fulfill two requirements. They fact-check stories before publication, and they print prompt, detailed corrections to stories. For most news, this means large, well-established media outlets. There are such outlets across the entire political spectrum. As you know, online news sites you subscribe to will modify the stories you're shown based on your profile. This was discussed briefly by Lisa. The stories you've read before and the ones you've ignored determine which stories you're shown. This tends to increase our news bubbles by not showing stories that you're known to avoid. The best way to avoid this phenomenon is to get an actual hard copy of the newspaper or magazine. Flipping through it, your eye will fall on stories you might otherwise never have seen. Checking facts and claims. These can be checked quickly at Snopes.com or factcheck.org. I suggest putting these sites on your browser's favorites bar and using them frequently, especially as we head into the election year in the US, where many claims will be made and that need fact-checking. Slide 8, please. Whenever a claim is made that should be factually checked, there should be some attributed source. Facts presented without attribution should immediately flag your suspicions. As much as possible, go to the original sources. If the source is some group you've never heard of, check them before citing the facts. Many highly political organizations choose virtuous-sounding names that have little to do with their real mission. If it helps, think of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is the official name of North Korea. You will note that every single word is misleading. It's not democratic, it's not a republic, it wasn't based on the will of the people, and it only represents half of Korea. For images, you can right-click on the image and copy the link. You can then paste that into a site called tineye.com. There you'll see all the instances of this image that TinEye has found on the web. You could see them listed in reverse chronological order, which shows you the oldest instance of the image first. This is how I found out that the firemen in the previous slide were working in Tasmania in 2019, not in Hawaii, and certainly not in the Ukraine. Next slide, please. Videos are still problematic. However, you can often use search engines to see whether any site has determined whether a clip is fake. As I mentioned earlier, the use of these tools has been a recommended practice, especially for researchers and journalists. Now this practice will become an integral part of how you see the world. Now that we've covered the ways to discern reality, what does that responsibility entail? Next slide, please. Mark Twain once observed, quotes, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes." It is going to be very important not to be part of lies' rapid travel and to be faster at helping truth put on its shoes. How do we avoid helping a lie travel? The first thing is not to share content whose veracity we don't know. Not on social media, not on email, not in spoken word. This seems like an obvious thing until some unusual piece of information comes our way that happens to fit our preferred narrative. Then we want to share it with everybody. For example, this image, which recently started appearing on Facebook and elsewhere. When you see this image for the first time, it likely stirs outrage or a feeling of damn right. and many similar emotions. Feeling any of those emotions must convey to you that your responsibility, your responsibility to withhold that image until you know whether it's true. The more the outrage, the more your resistance to sharing it should increase. As I mentioned at the beginning, the age of AI will bring wonderful developments, but it will impose a series of disciplines on thinking people of the world. A need to improve their skills in the workplace and a need to improve discernment in all other areas, especially online. The latter requires effort, and like you, there are many times when I and others would like to share something without having to verify sources and check details. Careless sharing of this kind, as well as intentional sharing by bad actors, is how lies get halfway around the world so quickly. Next slide, please. I know that very few, so careless sharing of this kind, as well as the intentional sharing by bad actors, is how the lies move along so quickly. So in such cases, the individual's responsibility would suggest silence. As Will Durant, the historian, said, nothing is often the right thing to do and always a clever thing to say. I know that very few world goodwill sessions are quite as dark as this, and fewer yet are enhanced with the Marx Brothers and Tom Cruise, but I hope that this has been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate all the thoughts you've shared. And I think I'm sure the participants here today have really found it beneficial to really get a sense of, what they can do individually to help to combat, the misuse of technology in its right moral direction. So thank you. I was looking forward to asking you some questions. We're a little bit over time. Actually, we're quite a bit over time overall. But I would at least like to briefly ask you one question, if that's all right. And I think it's a pretty good question. I think one that people find very relevant. And so, as you know, today there are many people in the world who are in because of all these profound changes and crises, they're really sort of bereft of hope and of a real sense of the future and of promise for the future. And so I was wondering, what advice would you give to someone who is struggling with maintaining a sense of hope during this difficult time in our planetary evolution?
Well, I think that there are communities that you can plug into, much like what Lisa was talking earlier, communities where people are having intelligent conversations. I think one of the things to do is to avoid social media. Social media is not a tool for the kind of positive, thoughtful, healing conversations. But there are forums for those, and to check on those, to be part of those, and actively be part of those. The other thing is stop being online. Go meet your neighbors. Go into town. Go do what people did before the web, and the more you link with people. I'm just repeating what Lisa said, and I hope to get it as articulate as she said it. But if you put down your phone and you go meet people who vote differently than you do, and you can sit down and have coffee with them, or even just talk with them and ask them how they came to those opinions, all of a sudden, this polarization becomes very much attenuated. And you can understand that people with a different point of view came to it not because they're stupid, but because they had an experience in their life which suggested that this is an important way to look at the world. And that's tremendously helpful and tremendously healing too. It also makes you a little more circumspect about expressing your own opinions blindly. And
Very good answer, Andrew. I have this comment here from Curtis Hoffman. He just says very directly, turn off, tune out, and drop in. So I think
that's a great line. That's a great line.
That's about sums it up. Andrew, I'm so sorry. I'm looking forward to hearing more of what you have to say on this topic in the panel for sure. But I think now, because we're so far over time, we're gonna have to move on. Okay, but thank you so much. And apologies about those technical things. The full screen wasn't working, but I hope you were all able to see the video still, at least a little bit. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
So now we're planning just a short break before we proceed with our third speaker and the rest of the seminar. We were planning to have about 15 minutes, but I think we're going to shorten that to at least probably about, I would say 10 minutes. Let's just plan to come back at 2:45 then. Eastern time, so that's in 10 minutes. And we'll proceed then with our third speaker, Sidarius Tikara Perota. So see you all shortly. Hello, everyone. Welcome back from that short break. Hope everybody had time to grab a coffee or a quick tea and run to the restroom. So we continue. I'm happy next to introduce our final speaker today, Sidarius Takara Perota, to speak about responsibility in the age of AI, a framework of understanding. Sidarius is a seasoned software entrepreneur, CEO, and a recognized expert in artificial intelligence and knowledge management. He has utilized his deep expertise to help hundreds of companies improve their knowledge automation strategy. Sidarius was one of the pioneers in applying artificial intelligence to knowledge management, having built, deployed, and advocated ML NLP algorithms for over a decade. His knowledge management and AI expertise have come together to benefit organizations like the World Bank, Harvard Business School, and MIT. Sidarius is co-founder and CEO of Shelf and has led the company to numerous accolades, including the Knowledge Management Project of the Year in 2021 and 2023 in CIO Review. His thought leadership has been featured in Fast Company, Forbes, and Yahoo News, where he continues to influence the intersection of knowledge management, artificial intelligence, and the future of work. Sidarius, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, Michael. Do I have the ability to share screen?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, fantastico. All right, so first of all, I just wanted to say the other presentations today were just fantastic, and I gained a lot of inspiration from them. So hopefully I could bring that inspiration to the next minutes where I'll be sharing this with you. Oh, sorry, I need to do slideshow. Okay, there we go. And this was all created by AI, of course. That is an expected outcome here. So Michael already gave you the background. The one thing I want to say is I'm a practitioner, and that means I've made a lot of mistakes and banged my head a lot. And usually I'm the one on the opposite side of the coin of what I'm going to talk about today, which is the positive aspect of this work. And the baseline I have is actually the same as what Andrew said, is that the responsibility really lies on us. But I'll build towards that and hopefully give a framework of understanding why I came to that conclusion and why I'm not going to talk about the opposite side of the coin today. The key topics are going to talk about a larger momentum of force that has been in motion for thousands of years to try to understand the context of where we are today, so we can pull ourselves out of the microcosm and look at the macro. Convergence of technologies, acceleration and change, and what can we do? So pretty general, generic. Hopefully that's not what you get out of this presentation. All right, so here's my big perspective on this. It is very easy, as Andrew made clear, it's very easy to get lost in the news. It's very easy to take things, well, the news takes things out of context. So it's very easy to follow the news in the way they take things out of context. But my perspective is to call AI it or the other is an extremely dangerous practice, and something that we need to collectively work ourselves out of doing. Because it makes it the other, it makes it something that's alien, it makes it something to be afraid of. And in reality, as someone who's built these models, who's failed many, many times, meaning that I actually made it work a couple of times as well, it's us. We create the models. It's humanity that creates the models. It's people in the engine room that are creating the models. It isn't something outside of us. And it doesn't control the world. So it just does things in a different way that can be scary. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because this has been going on a very, very long time. I'd say at least 10,000 years. And with the advent of writing, which is the first really extension of our thinking capabilities, the aid of the mind, first aid of the mind, which is computerization, was writing. And this was the very beginning of the augmentation of our abilities to think, create, build, communicate, and manifest collectively. So hopefully that stretches the timelines a little bit. I'm going to talk about 5 macro trends. Again, each and every one of these builds on the other, and they are all driven by us. We do these things. People make these decisions. And we also are the ones, as Lisa shared, that need to hold other people accountable for these things. So I'm going to go over these 5 macro trends. I'm not going to necessarily, I will couch it in AI from now and again by mistake. But the major point I want to make is these are 5 forces that are in motion, that are accelerating. And at this point, they are beyond any single human's control because they're very decentralized. So we have the computers. 5,000 years ago, actually, it started with the abacus. So 5,000-year-old invention that has obviously accelerated very quickly over the last several decades. And the thing I want to hyper focus on, because it's very relevant to the conversations on AI right now, and that is the microchip, because it's the foundational building block in which all devices, data, and AI is built. And to understand the microchip, then you get to understand the value of the cloud and what it does, because you're taking something physical and now you're essentially, it's still physical. It's not this mysterious cloud. Again, a funny analogy that they say that. It's just physical in somebody else's garage instead of yours. So big company buys a whole bunch of computers and that you get to borrow from them at any point in time. And something that you'd have to go to the store and buy this computer and buy these wires and do this and do that and get this software and spin up this instance and that instance and expand your storage. All that can be done instantaneously since it's on somebody else's environment and you can just pay for it. But that's very, very important because it's an accelerator. And things that took tens of thousands of dollars and weeks can be done in hours and really less than $1,000. I put $1,000 to be non-controversial here. And one of the major forces, a lot of the things that the Gen AI algorithms are doing now, I think are really, it is a timing thing. It is a result of a confluence of these forces and that compute cost getting so low that it was affordable that you could deploy a technology that is the fastest adopted technology in mankind, because you weren't going to go out of business by getting 200, 300 million users on it. So this is a very powerful force, and this has led to the acceleration of mobile and connected devices, including the Fitbit and anything else that you may have on you, is very important because all these devices every day, all day, are generating data, and a ton of data. And obviously, the more there are, the more countries they're in, the more new things are able to be discovered in the patterns and recognition of connection points within the data. So that's essentially where we get to today, because you have these exponentially increasing compute, you have exponentially increasing devices, you have exponentially increasing amounts of data, and now we can process that, we can see patterns, and we can understand that data in new ways. And this is accelerating, and this has led us to what we're calling AI, which is just a bunch of stuff that we've created. I don't want to diminish it, but at the same time, I don't want to demonize it either, because it's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing to do, because it disempowers. It's a disempowering thing to make it an other or an it. So let's go on. So we're still, there's an elbow, an exponential curve, and we're like right here. I just want to make that clear that these forces that have been in motion for quite a long time have been accelerating and creating a new age. It's very clear that this is a new age that we're entering. And we're still the very early innings of this new age, maybe the early minutes of the game, because all of this stuff is still accelerating. And I had, when I gave a presentation earlier this week on KM World, I had some scary slides. So I took those out now because I didn't mean to freak people out, but it looked like I did. So again, I'll go into what the AI revolution means to me and why 2023 was a breakthrough year. Mostly it was because of the scale at that cost that I just shared. It was affordable. There was the Gen AI breakthrough, but the Gen AI breakthrough was affordable to have 175 billion parameters that became 300, which became 2 trillion, which keeps expanding because of that cost. And then because of that, because it was affordable, first of all, with those other trends behind it, with those other forces behind it. And if those other forces collapsed, then the piece on top, that force on top, would also collapse. So I just want to make it clear that these are very interrelated and they cannot exist without one another. If you don't have data anymore, you don't have the AI models are not going to be as effective. If you don't have a whole bunch of devices constantly observing and feeding information back, you don't have the compute chip being cheap. All these things are completely and totally intertwined. And this is a thing that was really big, which I think has freaked out the media, is this type of report from McKinsey, which essentially pulls the time back. Like all these prognostications about 5 years ago when AI was going to start taking human qualities, human cognitive skills. And they've been pushed back by 40, 50 years this year because of what happened with Gen AI. And yeah, that is definitely a good reason to take notice, obviously. And then the other thing is clearly, again, talking about the elbow and the curve. There's only 200 billion has been invested. $3 trillion are going to be invested in the next 6 years. I mean, that is it's an unfathomable number. And it's the fastest growing industry in the history of our species. So yeah, a lot more is going to start accelerating. And I think, again, using those techniques that Andrew shared of being able to sift and sort through the news and find the truth and find the things that have the highest lever is a superpower in this day and age. Because really, to know which things to use and to know which tools to master is, I think, a key aspect of being able to do your job in this new age that we're in. All right, this was a quote from Steve Jobs that I've updated. So if a computer is a bicycle for our minds, then AI is equivalent of a supersonic jet because of all the things that it can do. And now I'm going to kind of do a lightning round tour of a whole bunch of other technology and how these things are converging and how it's a new prism in order to see our lives now, in order to see our lives in the future. And again, I'm going to very much cover the positive aspects of these things. Here are the 5 forces, and here's the fields that I'm going to cover. Obviously, this could have been 8, this could have been 12. There's not a lot of time. I picked 5 that I think are particularly top of mind for myself. But again, I'm biased in my own ways. So I've probably left things out, and that is noted. All right, so first is the Internet of Things. This is the one that's most prevalent in mainstream consciousness. It's the most mature in a lot of ways because it's those mobile devices. This is part of the 70 billion that are soon to be online. The thing that I wanted to focus on here is how these change with all of the things happening, because they're going to start being able to intercommunicate and share data and create pictures of things that we didn't have before. And all sorts of things like our clothing, our sneakers, obviously our glasses, our homes, they're all going to start to become virtualized because the data that would support that is so cheap. And the value and the monetary value of providing that insight is so high. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be new ways of looking at the world that are going to start emerging from all these wearables, the intelligent homes, and of course, the intelligent medical devices, which I'll get into in a bit. Personally, this is one of the things I'm most excited about because I had a passion for environmentalism when I was in the U.S. Peace Corps a long time ago. And this has truly transformational capabilities. There's 4 key technologies I want to articulate here. One is the 3D printing, material science, generative design, and 4D printing. And what it essentially just means is that every community can become a manufacturing hub of its own supplies. So that means, and this is some crazy stuff, so I can send links to reference this. I'm not making this up, what I'm about to say. You'll be able to print your food. You'll be able to print your clothes. You'll be able to print your home or replacing parts of your home. You'll be able to print your equipment, vehicles. And all of these things are coming together to enable, it's really a new production model that's very, very exciting because it's much more sustainable. I'll just give a quick picture of that. Here's what the industrial era production process looked like. You're getting all your materials from all over the world. They're going into some kind of production facility. They're getting individually, like iron and cotton, go into their own facility, then they get centralized in another facility, and then they go to a distribution center, and then they go to retail consumer, and that's all costing tons of resources. This is what it looks like if you want to put a little chart, graph, extremely inefficient, extremely bad for the environment, extremely bad for global warming. But here's the potential of this decentralized fabrication is that these hubs, these areas, these localities can eliminate all the need for all that transportation. I mean, even coffee grinds can become shoes. Disposable organic waste can become food. What are some of the other ones that are really cool? Stones, little tiny pebbles you could print into blocks that turn into houses. It's really incredible. Next one is robotics. This usually scares people. I'm going to tell a different story. And those look scary, and Elon Musk is a funny guy that he made these so scary looking, but these are the Optimus robots from Tesla. I think there's 10 million of them in production. And they're essentially domestic help. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed, I don't know if they're going to come in the market next year or the year after. Clearly, there is a lot of investment in them, and they're essentially going to do your laundry, mow your lawn, clean your dishes, and do a whole bunch of other cook food if you want. And they'll do a whole bunch of other domestic work. What's interesting here, though, is that's the very first iteration of it. Eventually, skills that took 12 years, 16 years, like a doctor, a surgeon, eventually these things are going to be accessible by this type of technology. And it will make things that are cost prohibitive and impossible to have access to for especially developing world countries. It's going to enable that to happen at scale, that surgery is going to be able to happen at scale. And obviously you could use that other slide with the 3D printing for the materials for the surgery and have a local little force of robots, which are only about $30,000, I believe today. And you will be able to have a different level of healthcare. And that's only one example. This is the stuff that I have deployed personally within our company, and I've seen its capabilities. I've seen what it's been able to do. It's been very inspiring. There's this movement in a lot of ways. At first is very scary because you can see the dark side. It's very easy to see it. It's not hard at all to imagine the risks. But when you start harnessing the positive aspects of it, it's really incredible. I've essentially empowered our entire organization. We have training every week on different AI solutions and different kind of augmentations of different work roles. And we have people doing higher quality work, better work, and enjoying it. The artist who produced all of these images on Midjourney, she's like delighted. She's a creative, and she is absolutely delighted. She's never been more fulfilled in her job before. And obviously the developers are super people at this moment because they're able to produce more code. And I want to just address that code thing really quick. Everyone's going to be able to code, I believe, by next year, even. If not now, with a little setup and a little help from a tech or an engineering person, you probably could start coding right now. But by next year, the access of having a prompt that will write computer code that you could then deploy without having to know a programming language is very, very close on the horizon. And that kind of goes also into the AI assistance. This was released on Monday with OpenAI and the GPT-4 Turbo. It's called the AI assistance, but that's the very first version of these autonomous agents. But in the next year, by this time next year, they're going to start being able to create websites, software, marketing materials, videos, commercials, movies without any human intervention, just with the prompt. That same prompt that you're using, that same thing that you're just asking questions and having it do plagiarism, you can have it actually write a program for a new product that you have for peace let's say, encouraging better relations. You have this idea for some software using all the principles that Lisa shared. You want to create it. You can have it create it. You could say, give it feedback. No, I don't like this, change that. You can have it create a website for you. You can have it create the marketing message for you, obviously as you as the director. You'd have to be a director. It's an augmentation. It's not a replacement. This is very exciting because we're using this at scale right now. It's like I said, the very early parts of the elbow, but we've already seen maybe 33% productivity gains and happiness gains really inside of our orgs because people are not doing the things that they don't want to do. They're accelerating and doing more of the things that they're good at. Now we're going to get into the world of the weird and the wild. It would be irresponsible of me not to share the next two slides. So these are BMIs. They also have quite negative publicity online, quite scary, a chip in your brain and all this stuff. But if you understand, again, the 5 key forces driving this, and you understand that it's just data. Your brain is emitting an electrical, it's an electrical engine, and it's emitting frequencies. And as it creates electrical patterns, this is data. And these are things that can get translated. And these are things that thousands of neuroscientists and innovators are actively working on. And again, this is behind labs. It has very negative publicity at this point, which of course it would. But the promise of it is incredible. I've read white papers on very strong belief from reputable people like Peter Diamandis saying that the belief that Parkinson, Alzheimer's, dementia will be permanently cured in our lifetime. That's exciting. And then obviously there's the augmented brain capabilities of being able to have more of your own memory and being able to have more insight into how your brain thinks and how to better activate the areas of your brain that are strong and how to, let's say, fortify the areas of your brain that are not as strong. So it's a universal improvement, has the potential to universally improve our mental function, our mentality. And then this is the one probably, I don't think this gets, it's funny, I had to reflect on it. Why does this not get any press? Because they're all in trials and it's all in labs and it's not mainstream at all. And I was thinking even that the stem cell, the really interesting stem cell work, it hasn't passed FDA approval yet. So people have to go to Costa Rica and places like that in order to get the treatment. But it is quite magnificent what happened with the help of data and AI in breaking the genome. All this stuff is coming online now. I mean, the ability to edit your own genes, your ability to print areas of your own biology that are not functioning properly, removing the need for people to die or people to have to sacrifice some part of their body to enable someone else to live. And then obviously the most cutting edge stuff is gene regeneration, which is very interesting. I talk a lot about that. And there's a book by Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis called Life Force. They go into that a lot. They set up a foundation, a medical facility called Fountain Life, actively working on this stuff. I'm a member of it. The resources are incredible. They do 3D prints of my brain, 3D prints of every single one of my organs, able to tell me things at the microscopic level that no test in mankind could have possibly told me before. And they brought this concept of longevity escape velocity, which I won't go into, but essentially means people are going to live longer and live better at scale. And a lot of people on the edge of the medical profession believe this is a foregone conclusion at this point with all the breakthroughs that we've had. So what does this all mean? Why did I share all this stuff with everyone today? Because I'm supposed to be talking about responsibility. I was inspired to make some changes to this deck because I believe the responsibility, as I shared in the very beginning, lies on us. Because this is an opportunity, as I've shared, and our own augmentation. So we have a program inside our organization called Augmented Shelf, which is the augmentation of all of us through sharing, through hiving our collective understanding together. And I think this is something that anyone can take advantage of. And essentially going back to that very old chart, going through the tens of thousands of years of history that got us here, this is just an acceleration of something that started, which is the augmentation of our ability to think, create, build, communicate, and manifest. It enables us to do more faster, learn more in a better way, augment our creative abilities, not replace them, build faster with less resources. People who don't know how to code can now write a software program. People who don't know how HTML can now put up a website, communicate more broadly and effectively. And then the most important thing, and what I wanted to share with everyone here today, this is an amplification of your life purpose if you allow it to be. Certainly, this is going to be the amplification of people's life purpose in the tech community, which there was some commentary in the earlier talks. Their life purpose being amplified may not be the ones that we want amplified, but they're going to do that because they understand the things that I'm sharing with you today. And I just wanted to share this because I have this knowledge and I understand it. And I think that the people on this call today are exactly the people in the world that need to know these things, that they're exactly the people that need to be amplifying their ability to achieve and to augment their own lives. So the opportunities ahead, not the dark stuff, not the Byzantine general dilemma and all that stuff, the good opportunities, because I also believe collectively, if we work together and we do amplify our life force, that we collectively are creating the reality that we intend to create. And that if we're putting that positive intention and building those positive projects and programs and informing and getting people to follow these intentions and augmenting that life force, then we will generate the positive outcome. And that's how it's going to be done, in my opinion. I didn't talk about universal education at the highest level and having Socrates or Plato being your personal tutor. I did talk about longevity, escape velocity, acceleration of human evolution, kind of touched on it, didn't talk about it. And I think, funny enough, I have a lot of things that cross over with what Andrew said earlier. So I am really grateful for the talks today. Learn as much as you can. Embrace and adapt. Don't fight. Use the technology, because I can promise you others will be doing it. Other people who may not have the conscious and moral compass that you all have. And this enables a reimagination of your work and a creative expansion of what it can be, and enables us to actively create the future that we want to live in together. So that is my talk, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Sidarius. That was a very, very rich presentation. And I think you really did give a very positive perspective, but at the same time, it did bring up so many, as you say, obvious ethical dilemmas, especially with regard to genetics and the accessibility of it all, that it's not so difficult to become concerned, at least. So thank you so much. I'd like, before we move into our panel, I would like to pose just a few questions to you, Sidarius, if I could. You wrote, one of your main points, which I think was a very good one, is this idea that, AI is not, or technology really, is not separate from us. It basically is us. It's an extension of humanity, an extension of human intelligence. But at the same time, it's very easy to see ways in which it could affect negatively human agency. I was wondering if you could speak some more about ways that AI could be a potential threat to human agency, especially as it becomes perhaps more autonomous, or just more powerful or more influential in our lives.
I agreed with one of the other speakers. They said that it just makes us more of who we already are. So that is kind of the baseline of it. And I won't fill in all the gaps on what that exactly means, because it's very easy to get dark. And to be quite honest, I probably hit the wrong tone in a couple of other talks that I gave unintentionally, because there are things that are inherently scary about all of this. But again, I would say you could use your imagination on the negatives. I could go on and on too long on the negatives and the risks. They are everywhere. But my main point that I wanted to bring is it's our focus on augmenting the positives. It's our focus on building that future that we want, and of not fighting against the negative forces, but of augmenting the positive forces that are at play as well.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, part of human agency is remaining positive for sure. So that's great. And I agree. There's so many. I think the overwhelming nature of the problem is that there's so many different and profound problems. And when you don't get into the specifics, you don't really see any thought form of a solution either. And so I think really productive conversation about a problem kind of would have to hone into on, one specific problem to give you a sense of, okay, well, here's what the problem is. It's not this, it is that. And here's some things we could do. Here's some things that we're maybe trying to do, but don't work, and to really get a more balanced sense of what's going on. Not to bring up another one of those problems actually, but I wanted to ask you a question about
Going for the problems every time. I did.
Yeah.
I got clued into all this early, and I have to constantly fight my own mind to not go dark.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but the questions about AI singularity, which is, to my understanding, the point at which an AI system actually starts to approximate human intelligence, so-called. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about whether this, that's one of the big red flags that people say, what's the point in which it becomes either autonomous or approaches human intelligence, and either replaces us on one hand, or on the other hand, outsmarts us in whatever way. And I was wondering what you thought about not necessarily the problem itself, but the fact that there is this problem, whether that's helping humanity to rethink the nature of intelligence and therefore the nature of human consciousness.
I mean, I think that's the right question. Obviously, that is the question I'm asked every single time. When is AGI coming? I think a couple things on that I'd like to just fill in. That's important to have a sophisticated conversation on it. One is, how are you going to define an AGI? How do you define singularity? The best definition of singularity I've seen is from Ray Kurzweil, and he talks about that it's the point where you can no longer predict the future, because the rate of change, the acceleration and pace of change makes all prediction impossible. In a lot of ways, I think in that definition, we are approaching it, which is why that need for adaptation and flexibility of mind is, I think, something so important to cultivate. And I think one of the things that actually naturally is developed in the practice of meditation. So you have that singularity, and then the AGI question is, how do you define it? If you allow OpenAI to define it, I believe that they would define AGI by the things that are about to be coming out soon, which is just artificial general intelligence, which means that the AI can achieve human level performance in specific areas. In a lot of ways, I've talked to people and they're like, yeah, we already crossed that threshold in 2023 because it already meets a minimum viable threshold of being able to accomplish specific tasks. Then there's the more sophisticated definitions in how the AI is able to imitate a human, the Turing test type of scenarios. I won't get into that. I can only say that it seems inevitable to me that it's going to continue to accelerate in its ability to extend the work that humans currently do. Yeah. And I don't necessarily think that has to be a bad thing. It's just a matter of perspective, and it's a matter of cultivating a way of interpreting it and allowing the opportunity of this moment to accelerate and to augment your own consciousness and your own mentality, because certainly it does do that. I believe Christine in the very beginning said that it expands your knowledge, but not your wisdom. I 100% agree with that. But a lot of people don't have knowledge. A lot of people have very, very little knowledge, and they're very ignorant. And it is a kind of a great universal equalizer in that regard. It's a universal educator and all that stuff. So from crawl, walk, run model, I think it helps people get from crawl to walk. A lot of people that don't have that opportunity now.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, Sidarius. It was a very, very enlightening and really great response. And I have a few more questions here I wanted to ask you, but I think we really must go on to the panel if we're going to have enough time for it. So thank you so much, Sidarius. And I'd like to now invite our other two speakers to turn on their videos. And we'll see. There's Andrew. All right. So I'd like us just to have a bit of an open conversation about just a few topics between the three of us, and hopefully we can build up a little bit of have some time here, enough time here to build up some momentum. But I would like to just let the audience know, hopefully we will be able to leave time for at least a few questions as well here. So if you do have something you'd like to say, please raise your hand. Please, if you could keep the questions very short and direct as well, that would really help us to be efficient with our time. So the first, let me get my notes here. Sorry, one second. So the first question I'd like to really look at here is this idea of, what is really the nature and extent of humanity's moral responsibility, and specifically, what role does technology play in all of this? And so the first question I'd like to pose is to each of you, how do you see this idea of moral, social, say ecological responsibility affecting public discourse? What role is technology playing in this conversation? I know, Lisa, you already spoke a lot about that, but if you have any maybe additional thoughts to share, specifically about, the idea of right action or right behavior, morality, ethics.
Yeah, I think it's very concerning because political polarization is affecting our ability to listen to each other and come to agreement on ways to address crises that exist in the world today. We have a number of crises. We have a climate crisis. We have a migration crisis. We have economic crises and conflict in multiple parts of the world that has a nuclear dynamic to it that could be very bad for all of us who are even very far away. So we need to be able to talk with each other and solve problems. And this kind of polarization that is being fueled online, really, again, amplified. It existed already, but it's being amplified by the algorithms and design of platforms, I think is greatly hindering both the public from listening to each other and also our leaders in Congress here in the United States. And certainly in European countries, we see the same type of effects on their ability to govern, ability to make decisions together, to respond morally and ethically to the crises of our time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to just add something to sort of underscore what Lisa's just said. Just to give you a sort of a view into the scale of the problem that Lisa's describing of countries having entire armies of people putting out material to create conflict. In 2019, Facebook published an amazing statistic about how many fake profiles they had taken down in 2019. So there are 7 billion people on Earth, about 1 billion active users on Facebook. In the first 9 months of 2019, Facebook took down 5.4 billion fake profiles. Okay. Now, when you think about that, the only way that anybody has enough time to be creating that many fake profiles is to have a government-sponsored, it's nation states with armies of people trying to create fake profiles by which they can then post material to draw people apart or to represent a point of view or so forth and so on. So it's a real serious problem. It's an issue that the scale of which is really quite enormous. Which is why it's so important to be attentive and alert to what you're seeing and to question what you hear and not respond to things that elicit strong emotional reactions.
I could say one thing that I do know in development, several startups that are working on essentially assistants that just go through social media. So somebody could download it that goes through social media and just does a lot of the things that are needed. It's verification. It just does a lot of the services that have been discussed here. It does it automatically and in real time. So those are some of the things that are going to come online. And then obviously there'll be the opposite of that. Everything is a coin that has two sides. So there'll be whatever force is working towards making it more transparent and easier to detect fakes and falsities and misinformation. There'll be another force of people doing the opposite, accelerating the ability or making it harder for people to discover that. So again, it's up to us. It's the day-to-day decisions that we make and how we influence the people in our own circles and the people that we are able to talk to that I think matters.
Thank you, guys. Another sort of related question. There's increasing conversations today about ethics and morality as well, and that may be one of the sort of positives of all the crises that are coming up. I was wanting to ask you do you all feel that these sort of revolutions in AI and tech are actually precipitating a sense that moral rightness, however one interprets that, of course, we all interpret it differently, should be the governing principles in every facet of human living, whether that's politics, economics, education, etc.
Could you reframe that? I'm not sure I understand.
It's okay. No, it's okay. It's not that's on me. So just the question is whether the revolutions in AI and tech are precipitating this sense that morality or ethics should actually govern politics, or should govern economics, should govern basic public decisions.
Well, I think in some sense, we've always had a sense that morality, ethics, religious values, human values should govern the way we make rules, at least, in the post, the world that is attempting to be democratic. In democracies, I think we have to find ethics to find our way to embrace the plurality of humanity. I'm interested in my colleagues, how you would answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm not sure is the answer I would give and detail some more. I agree that we all have the sense that morality has to define our decisions. Whether technology is making that more salient than it was before, I'm not sure. I really don't know. I'm sorry. I wish I could give you some kind of intelligent answer beyond that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is a hard one. This is a difficult one in that it may need to get bad before it gets before it gets better, and that clearly we are in a period of decline morally. The only reference I can have on this is from a civilization study standpoint. Is nothing new. The thing that is new is that we have essentially one civilization with some lead dogs in it, but when civilizations start to break apart, or the principles that they were founded on start to break apart, this is a pattern that has happened in many other civilizations, from Rome to Greece to Egypt to Persia to China to Japan. These are things that we can learn from the past on, see how they play out. And I won't comment much more on that, but things are usually not total in their change. Things happen through a bell curve, and certain sections, which usually tend to be the larger sections, are where the tension is, but it doesn't need to be all or nothing. I'm sorry, that is not a satisfactory answer.
No, I've asked a very difficult question, I realize. So I just, I didn't mean I think the answers you all gave were really excellent. And I think for a lot of these, fundamental questions, there aren't really answers at all, sort of just perhaps ideas. So thank you all. I was sort of thinking more along the lines of like, for instance, a lot of times, at least in the US, there's this sort of foreign policy establishment that says, well, we have to do this, even though it's not really the right thing. It's the right thing for our interests, not the same thing for anybody else's. It's not really the moral choice, but it's the right choice because XYZ, there's some excuse, and I think to me at least, it does seem to be sort of fraying at the edges. And there's, I think, probably paralleling the tech revolution, a sort of social revolution as well, that who knows which is affecting the other. Perhaps they're both the cause of something, just a quickening in general of human activity, but I think the promise is that we are moving forward quickly, actually. And so we're moving forward through the problems and towards the solutions. Hopefully just one step at a time, or several steps at a time, it seems like. But I think oh gosh, the time is going so quickly. So I'll just jump into the sort of next topic, which is a bit more, I guess you could say, I was going to say easier one, but maybe it's not. Anyway, I'll just pose the question. But today's crisis of truth. And I heard, Lisa, I was watching some of your previous talks, and you used the word epistemic uncertainty. This idea that even the foundations of truth itself today are on sort of unstable ground. There's this idea of a post-truth era, whatever that means. And the question I wanted to pose is that, is this crisis of truth really a bad thing? Do you think perhaps it's pushing humanity, that is, individuals, of course, towards developing a finer sense of discernment, perhaps? And what are some of the ways in which technology, at least you already shared this, what are some of the ways in which technology is helping us to cope with this crisis?
I'll let others respond since I've already said a bit.
Well, certainly what I was discussing in large part in my presentation was epistemic uncertainty. Epistemic, for people unfamiliar with the term, means it refers to epistemology, which is how do we know what we know? If you can't trust what you see and hear and read, it becomes very difficult to know how you know what you know. So I haven't seen Lisa's previous talks on that, but certainly, discipline in how you choose your sources. We are in an age of greater uncertainty. And as Sidarius mentioned, I think one of the things that may arise from AI is that we will become better at detecting things that are untrue, and better at, there'll be new technologies that will be able to flag things as being fake or being incorrect, and people will be able to go to AI and ask questions and get reasonable answers in many ways the same way they do with Wikipedia today, which, at least in the English version of Wikipedia, the pages are carefully monitored, especially on controversial topics, to try to reflect what is known to be true. that may be the kind of solution. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question or not, but certainly AI will provide solutions as to the problems that it also delivers.
Mm.
Truth. Truth is eternal, and truth is an internal quality at its core. And I think that doesn't change, maybe doesn't change in life or death. So I think we're very safe from that perspective. And then looking at how it permeates society, I would take the same perspective, is put it on the responsibility of each individual, starting with yourself, obviously has to be the compass for their own truths, and has to be responsible for what they share as a truth and what they believe is a truth. And in the end, there are many examples of people having truths that they believed in that were false. Those are easily referenced in World War II, World War I, so forth and so on. And over time, I think the truth and the light only increases. It only becomes more. And I think the problems that we're having are ones of scale, because we have so many humans and we have so many ways to hear so many humans. But on the totality of things, there is more truth, there is more light, and that we have evolved a great deal in the last 70 years since the last world wars. And that would be my only point on that. And I just want to make a quick comment on the collapses and when things change and get better. The world wars would be a very good example of that. French Revolution would be another example of that. Roman breakdown would be another example of that. These things that happen, they seem terrible at the moment, but then when all the dust clears, it seems like the totality of consciousness and humankind has somehow risen in those regions, in those areas. So I just referenced that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Darius. Yeah, there is this distinction between, like sort of spiritual or religious truth and then objective truth. And obviously it's important to operationalize their two, because they're basic. They're in one sense, they're sort of separate things. But at the same time, I think there is definitely an interplay between, I think a lot of people increasingly, they have this sort of religious, spiritual type, alignment that for them, whatever they are, getting into the specifics, that's less important, but there are certain fundamental truths, the golden rule, for instance, that's one that's consistent across all pretty much all traditions, basic compassion, basic empathy. And so when you use those as your baseline, then when it comes to objective truth, the whole perspective becomes different, because on one hand, there's just facts, those are the building blocks in a way. But then right away, you're posed with, well, what about the presentation of those facts means something, so then right away you have meaning behind them. Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to share on that topic, or?
Yeah, I don't have anything additional to add. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, great. Watching the time here. If anybody from the audience would like to, just to remind you, if anybody would like to, pose a question, please feel free to raise your hand at any time, and we'll try to get you in. One important question I wanted to ask each of you, actually, and it has to do with the future. It's a sort of perhaps a very difficult question, and I certainly understand if you don't want to respond, or maybe want to respond in a slightly different way. But I thought it would be good, sort of more creative exercise, to ask each of you this question, sort of about how you see the future. So the question is, it's hypothetical. So say humanity at every turn makes all the right choices. Every other turn we make the right moral choice. There's this moral problem, we make the right choice. This one here, we make the right choice. The right moral choice. Where would you see humanity in, say, 10, 20, or even 50 years? If we were really, really aligned on the straight and narrow, what sort of great changes in our civilizational structure, in our politics, in our economics, in our social relationship, just where do you? But I want to leave the. This is a bit of open ended as well. You know, what do you see? You know, if you were to imagine that.
I'm just dropping into the chat here a quote that I want to read. E.O. Wilson is a Stanford University professor. He said, "We have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology." And we really see that happening now. So our Paleolithic emotions, this is the reptilian part of our brain. This is the oldest part of the brain, the fight or flight. It's the part of the brain that when we're driving on the highway and there's an accident, we all slow down to see what happened, because that's what our brain has wired us to do, is to look at terrible things and to be attracted to danger and figure out what's happening. So social media plays on those Paleolithic emotions that we have, this basic neurobiology of how our brains work. So the gladiator arena that we see in the comment sections, you know, we have a hard time controlling that. It's widely known that social media is addictive. When I ask my students at Notre Dame and when I visit in other universities, I ask them, how many hours a day are you spending on social media? Anywhere between 5 and 8 hours a day. That is normal. That is across the board. And I had to outlaw phones in my classes. Any devices are no longer allowed in my class because they cannot help themselves. They have to be checking their phone for their notifications, for this, for that. And I can't keep their attention. And when their peers are talking, it's really painful. So yeah, we have these Paleolithic emotions, and these devices have been built to make us addicted to them, so that the profit, you know, whole motives that we talked about earlier. Medieval institutions, our governments are not yet able to catch up with regulating or understanding the godlike technology. The fact that this technology, as we've laid out here, is incredible. It has godlike gifts to us, but it can also destroy us. I thought those robots were very scary looking, because the only time I've seen robots like that are not doing housework, they're killing people. So like the fact that the Tesla you know, is coming out with robots to cook me spaghetti and clean my room, honestly, I think this is dangerous technology. We don't have governments who are able to regulate this or to protect us. And we might just think of it as a toy. That's what we thought of Facebook when it started. We thought, this is a toy, we can play with it. It's not really serious. It's not going to change the world. Next year, there are over 70 national elections. 70 countries around the world are having national elections next year. And this is the time when we still don't have regulations on social media, and there's going to be mass propaganda, disinformation, fake videos. Literally, the world could change to autocratic rule, oppression next year, 2024, because our medieval institutions have not caught up with our godlike technology. That's all.
Thanks, Lisa. Andrew, Sidarius, do you guys have any thoughts on that? You know, that question, where would you see humanity in 5, 10, 50 years?
Well, if everything goes well, and we know that that's an enormous if, and possibly even an implausible one. I think that several things will be very, very different. I think medicine will be very different. I think that science is probably going to be the first major beneficiary of AI. I think that many of the types of gene therapy that Sidarius was talking about will come to pass, and will come to pass fairly quickly. The formulation of new vaccines will happen very quickly, the formulation of new medications. And I think we'll also understand many, many things about the human body that we just don't know now. So I think that there we will see a lot of progress. I think we'll also see a lot of progress in agriculture. learning where and how to plant in places that today are not really amenable to agriculture, and having devices that can free humans from the manual labor of agriculture so that it can be done on a larger scale and feed the world better. I think those are things where we'll really see the world to be very different than it is today. So that's my best answer.
Darius, any thoughts?
I believe the presentation I gave was a really around a positive view of a lot of these technologies reaching the potential of good that they can achieve in humanity. And yeah, I think they only touch upon what is possible from the opportunity standpoint. And like I said, I'll be working to do whatever small amount of work I can do to try to aim it in that direction to my small part.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Darius. We have a question here from Steve Nation, actually, if we could. Steve, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi. Look, thank you, and I've really enjoyed it. It's a wonderful discussion. It's incredibly interesting to relate this discussion, which has been so much about AI, the sort of positive potential of AI, and the beautiful work in peace building. I want to place that in the context of the earlier event from London. The Geneva thing was too early for me, so I missed it. And the London event was looking much more at science in relation to wisdom. And in a way, what I've heard in these presentations, particularly latterly, is this Paleolithic brain, that AI is so empowering the Paleolithic brain. So the question would be to see how the wisdom consciousness is being empowered, because the meta-crisis of all of the crises of our time are clearly a spiritual crisis. I mean, it's so transparently a spiritual crisis that the only way forward is through wisdom. It's through the wisdom consciousness directing the powers of AI. And just the thought of that would be to say, we can't talk about these negative dangers only on their own level. We have to balance that with an understanding of this unbelievable revelation of interdependence and wholeness that is so powerful a presence in intelligent thought in human consciousness. Never in human history have we had the depth of understanding of not just the interdependence of all human beings and the interdependence of life on this planet, but the interdependence within the entire solar system and the universe. So I think if we're really going to reflect on these issues, we have to think in those bigger terms to see that wisdom is growing, and the practicality of wisdom needed to handle these issues that are raised by AI is where we're seeing evolution taking place. And to me, it's important not only to talk about the practical good things, as you've done beautifully, Sir Darius, and I loved Andrew, Lisa, all of these presentations, but to put that in the context of goodness being empowered as well. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Steve. That's I think just the right perspective, and that's very core to World Goodwill's message. Of course, that innate goodness is at the core of the human being and of the solution to the crises that humanity is facing today. Does anybody have anything to say in response to Steve?
Yeah, some of that actually does play out in social media. When I said before that the internet makes us more of who we are, what happened is that people who were really very unpleasant people or very sexist or so forth, when they started expressing those opinions, would actually get very vocal responses from the community. And, in the course of a couple of decades, the sexist kind of behavior that flourished for what 5,000-6,000 years, maybe longer, it became unacceptable certainly in Western countries, and in large part because of social media, because these things elicited reactions from people, and rather like what Lisa said earlier, people started to realize that if you give everybody free speech, you're going to have child pornography everywhere. Likewise, if you have people behaving badly, you're going to have other people in the community pushing back. So I think, going to Steve's point, there is a certain amount of evolution of values that derives from the social media and the larger public participation in dialogues. I'd be very curious to see if Lisa agrees with that or not.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's along the same lines that I think. Thanks.
Thank you. Darius, any thoughts?
I agreed with the comment by Steve. And I think I've shared, I do believe that on the whole, there's a bell curve, and it's very hard to see it through all of the noise and the fog, but on the whole, the light is increasing, and we are getting better. And that point was made by Andrew as well. So I that's what I see. It was very dark for many thousands of years. It's very hard to imagine what life used to be like even 150 years ago. I mean, we have come very far as a species. We've broken the social order that didn't allow for creation and entrepreneurship, that you were born into a caste and you were born into a role, and that was your role, and you couldn't get out of it. I mean, these things were suffocating to the whole of the species, and they controlled entire Europe, China, Japan, many of the populations of India, population centers of the world. I mean, it's incredible just to see how far we've come, although we want to go so much further, so much faster, and we want to keep going. But we have come far.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. This has been a really wonderful panel, a really wonderful seminar. Thank you. It's been a joy really to have, and an honor to have all of you with us here today. I will say, Bob, unfortunately, we didn't get to your question. But if you'd like to email it to us, we're happy to take that on. So thank you all so much. I'm going to turn the mic over now to Christine Morgan, our president, for just a few to conclude the seminar today.
Thank you, Michael. I'm aware of the time now, as you say, but I'd just like to add my thoughts and thanks to all the speakers, the three of you, who've helped us think through both the dangers as well as the positives in respect of technology and social platforms for the future and for now. But I also want to thank all our attendees for joining us today, and who just didn't turn off, tune out, and drop in elsewhere, as Curtis said earlier. It's incredible to hear about all the human ingenuity, such as we've heard today, in the face of social media problems, as well as the technical solutions which are so helpful to humanity. I think it's a discussion that will need to be reflected on a lot more, at least by myself, who isn't naturally tech oriented. And I'd like to sort of read more about, go back to this meeting and either listen to it or read some more about it. Because it's given us so much to think about, including, as Siderius says, for moral people to embrace technology because it's here to stay and it has a lot to give us. And all this upheaval that we are experiencing is awakening us to the choices that we must make between right and wrong, and to throw ourselves on the side of spiritual evolution, on the side of wisdom, as Steve has just said earlier. For World Goodwill holds the view that there is such a thing as the evolution of consciousness and continuity of life, of knowledge, and of service. In fact, there is a great planetary center of love and purpose which stands behind the scenes. And it's not an easy concept to bring to a suffering and confused humanity in a modern world. And so as we go into our meditation, it's good to bear in mind that goodwill as an aspect of love is a magnetic power that people respond to, whatever their beliefs, and even if they have none. And so that's just by way of introducing you to the meditation we're going to go into now. It's a goodwill meditation. And as we go through it, we'll hold in mind that at the heart of our being, we are souls. And as such, we are in communion with all souls and have telepathic rapport with them. So I'll say the stages as we go along. And at the end, we'll sound the sacred word 3 times, the Om. Meditation up on the PowerPoint, but I'll also read out the stages as we go along. To link up in thought with all those who are working with this Goodwill meditation group. Reflect upon the fact of relationship. You are related to your family, your community, your nation, to the world of nations. To the one humanity made up of all races and nations. Let us sound the mantra of unification. The souls of all are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to serve and not exact due service. I seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all people love. Reflect upon your own and humanity's relationship with all beings who dwell in the higher realms of mind and heart. The spiritual hierarchy of saints, rishis, bodhisattvas, and adepts, honored by the world's religions and spiritual groups. Imagine that you are standing together within the center of the spiritual hierarchy, immersed in the consciousness of the heart of love. For some, this heart of love is known as the Christ. Other faiths have other names for the one at the center, such as Maitreya, the Imam Mahdi, and the Kalki Avatar. Maintaining that high point of contact, let your thoughts reach out to include all members of the human family in whom the energy of goodwill is active. Sound the affirmation. In the center of all love, I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Visualize the energy of love flowing from the spiritual hierarchy through the men and women of goodwill and into the hearts and minds of all people, infusing them with goodwill and creating loving and harmonious human relationships. Meditate on ways of spreading goodwill, creating right human relationships, and restoring peace on earth. Realize that you are helping to build a channel between the spiritual hierarchy and humanity through which the energy of goodwill may flow, uniting humanity, helping to solve its problems, and healing differences and cleavages. Linked in thought with men and women of goodwill all over the world. Say the world prayer, the great invocation. Say it with deliberation and full commitment to its meaning, knowing that you are radiating its potent energies to humanity. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you. Thank you all for adding your energy to this seminar today. And we're just ending with this notice of 3 upcoming meetings, which you're all invited to join online. In the case of the Sagittarius meeting, it's also a physical meeting as well as an online meeting. But please let the office know if you're coming for security reasons. And we look forward to seeing you and meeting up again in the future. Thank you and good evening.